Welcome to the Everything Embodiment Podcast, where I will help you find peace, understanding, and love all within your human body, enhancing your mind-body connection through the exploration of vast ideas, concepts, and modalities, discussions all meant to propel you along your own unique spiritual journey. I'm your host, Amber Miller. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Amber Miller. This episode is for anyone that can feel that life as we've known it isn't going to look the same and doesn't want to bypass that, sugarcoat it, or spiral because of it. There's a lot of conversation right now around fear, money, and systems collapsing, America changing, and what's coming next. And for intuitive people especially, that can feel overwhelming. I wanted to have this conversation not to predict outcomes, but to talk about how we prepare ourselves internally to move through change without losing our footing. My guest today is Dallisa Hocking, a fifth-generation psychic medium, professional coach, and intuitive leader whose work reaches hundreds of thousands of people across podcasts, live events, and online platforms. Her social content has reached over 10 million views, and she's brought grounded conversations about intuition, fear, and alignment to more than 30 podcasts. She's also collaborated with world-class brands and designed virtual experiences attended by thousands, always keeping intuition embodiment at the center. And what I appreciate most about Dallisa's work is that she doesn't use intuition to amplify fear or urgency. She speaks honestly about dismantling, change, and uncertainty, while helping people regulate their nervous systems, release fear, and reconnect with their inner wisdom. Dallisa has been very clear that we're not being asked to panic right now. We're being asked to build capacity. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. Dallisa, thank you so much for being here. I'm really grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Amber. Oh my gosh, this conversation is going to have a lot in it. I can feel it already.
I'm excited. I want to start by honoring your lineage. A lot of people hear fifth generation psychic medium and immediately imagine something mystical or dramatic, but lived experience is usually much more nuanced than that. Can you please share what intuition and mediumship actually looked like in your real life growing up? What was normal in your household that might not have been normal for others?
Yeah, we talked about ghosts and predictions all the time. It's on my dad's side of the family. So, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, she could actually see full body apparitions with her physical eyes. And she would talk about which ghost was walking through her living room and what clothes they had on and her nickname for me was Lisi. And so she would often say, Lisi, you want to hear what I'm getting from my ESP, extrasensory perception, her predictions. So she would always call him her ESP. So we would sit in her living room and talk about all of the things that she was getting. I wish now, in hindsight, I would have asked her even more questions about her own grandmother because that's where she got her gifts from.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I know, her grandmother would see apparitions on the farm that she had with her husband. And her husband would be out working, during the day at the farm, and she would see ghosts working alongside of him. So he would come in for
Wow.
dinner and she would say, oh, do you know who was working alongside you today out on the farm? It's my family's like always been very open about it. So that was my great grandmother Belle and my grandmother Eloise. Yeah. So I was not planning on being a psychic medium. I was intrigued by all of it, but
Sure.
my gifts all dropped in overnight in 2015 when I was on a trip, and that's a whole other story. And we can go there if you want.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. I was living in Texas, working in Texas in 2015. I owned a company. I was a dating coach and a matchmaker, but I was always into all this stuff, right? So I got a notification that the Omega Institute in New York was hosting a workshop on synchronicity. And basically, a small group of people had come together and proven, at least what they believe their standpoint is, that there are no accidents and everything happens for a reason. So I thought, gosh, I really want to go to this workshop. And it was last minute. And, I got the cheap flight that was available. It just happened to be, a seat open. It was like $150. And like even back then in 2015, like from Texas to New York for
Yeah.
150 bucks. I'm like, okay, this is a sign. I got to go to this workshop. And I get there, and all of these things happen while I'm on that trip. The person who led the workshop is Dr. Eben Alexander, and he is a neurosurgeon who had his own near death experience. So he had put this group together. Anyway, long story short, the retreat, the event is amazing. All different kinds of synchronicities happen while I'm there. But the profound part that sticks with me all these years is the last night of my trip. I stayed at a friend's house. He just so happened to have a house, a second home in the woods near where the Omega Institute is. Now, in my opinion, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
And I knew him through a project that I did in Las Vegas. So I didn't know his family or anything. But I'm like, yeah, I'm going to come over. You live so close. Let's have dinner. And so we're sitting in his house, and he gets a phone call from a family member letting him know that his Aunt Barbara, who he loved dearly, had fallen down a flight of stairs and died unexpectedly that day. I felt so bad for him. But again, I don't know his family. I don't really know him on a very personal level.
Sure.
So I go to bed. He goes upstairs, goes to bed. I don't really think anything else of it. I don't know Aunt Barbara. And I fall asleep. Well, wouldn't you know, Aunt Barbara decides she's going to come and visit me in my dream in the astral state. And I could see her. I could see what she looked like. And she wasn't moving her mouth. And through the use of telepathy, she asked me to tell her nephew that she was okay. She made it to the other side. Okay. So I get up the next morning, half asleep, half awake, like coming to, and recalling what had just happened. Like, well, I'm going to go tell him. I'm
Yeah.
not going to keep this to myself. So I go out in the kitchen. I tell Peter, what does she look like? So I described the way that her hair fell, her facial features. He's, that's her. And so I end up driving back to the airport, LaGuardia Airport that day. My mind is just spinning because right then and there, I knew I'm like, this is what my grandmother has talked about with me for years. And now what? I can do it. So my brain starts going wild. I get back home to Texas. I go and have lunch with a friend a couple of days later. I'm telling her this whole story. And I said, let me show you some pictures from my trip. And so I reached to go get my phone, and there's a thumbnail photo on the home screen. And I dropped my phone. My eyes filled with tears. And it was because Peter had just sent me a photo from his aunt's memorial service that day. And it was exactly as she had looked just a couple of nights before. So that's what started everything. And then I just started practicing and channeling and doing written channels.
Yeah.
Is where it started. And then I added on, more tools and things along the way.
I love that story, and I have to share my own my own first experience of something that happened is kind of similar to yours, and I just have to touch on the telepathic communication thing because that's exactly what happened to me. But I was like hardcore atheist. I didn't believe in anything, so I thought I was having like a psychotic break. But I have to
Wow.
talk about that telepathic because that's exactly how it was. And I remember going to go speak, and I was communicating, but not with my voice. And I'm like, oh, I had an awareness that it was the telepathic communication. So I just love that you mentioned that. Was there a moment that you realized your experience wasn't universal in the way you grew up? That there are people like me that just thought, there's nothing and
Yeah. Funny you asked that question because when I kind of had to come out of the spiritual hiding spot, 10 years ago, because the messages were coming in so often and so clearly. Like I had to tell people,
Yeah.
because my whole life was changing. I decided to dissolve the company that I had for the dating and matchmaking. I decided to quit my job at a business school in Texas and really devote all of my time, energy to being a psychic and a psychic
Yeah.
medium. And so I knew I couldn't hide that. I remember sitting in my living room one day. I'm like, I have to go public. And back then in 2015, it sounds like so long ago back then. Uh, I had to make a social media post. I had to post that this is what I'm doing. And basically, that's what people did 10 years ago is like, if you had to make an announcement, you go on Facebook and you
Oh,
announce it
yeah.
on Facebook. I remember doing that. And I had mixed responses. I had some people that would tell me, "Oh yeah, we worked together back at whatever location, and you would always talk about your intuition and the downloads you were getting, but I don't remember doing any of that." So people have memories of me being more psychic than I was even aware of. Um, but I also,
Interesting.
yeah, I
That's
was like,
cool.
yeah. So I guess it was just like always a part of me, and I never quite noticed it to the same degree that they did. I did get like one little nasty gram from an ex-boyfriend that, oh, if you're so psychic, tell me what's going to happen in my life. It's like, oh, just be quiet, leave me alone, right? Because he's just
Yeah.
trying to poke me. And I had one family member who messaged me and said, I had a dream. Actually, it was a nightmare. You were basically being like chewed up and swallowed by demons. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound very nice. Like I wrote back
Oh.
and she was basically like, don't talk to me again. So
Oh, okay.
so anyway, there's just been like a variety of, but I think it's part of what I needed to learn. And that was not to take things personally. Because even on social media, now social media has gotten a little bit smarter where I can put keywords in. And
Yeah.
if somebody comments with a keyword that I've set up, it doesn't even let them comment with it. And I had to set that up because, or I felt I needed to, because the level of hatred
Yeah.
I would get online, and primarily from people that say they're very religious and that Jesus thinks I'm the devil. And it got so bad that I had to set up some parameters around it because I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, I think the Bible talks about prophecy, like,
Yeah.
and that we have spiritual gifts. I'm like, how did this all get like tangled up and misconstrued? Because I've met really lovely people that are psychics and mediums and card readers and astrologers, and they're the farthest thing from
Right.
being like, entangled with Satan himself. So I've had mixed reactions over the years.
I love that you talk about the fear. And I think everything that you described was incredibly brave, being in, similar shoes of having to, there's like your identity that you have like pre-awakening, I guess I'll say, and then post. And it's like sometimes people from the pre are not going to join you into the post. And I just think it's really important to talk about that fear and overcoming it because I just feel like so many people assume that intuition feels empowering right away. And it can actually be like disorienting before it's grounding. And to speak on the religious part, I absolutely believe in, Jesus now. And when I look at the people who use Jesus in a way to like kind of spread hate, I'm just like, he was a seer. He healed, he did Reiki, And so anyone that's afraid of it, I just look at it as, you're being controlled.
it's bizarre, very bizarre. But yeah, I've had experiences where Jesus and Mother Mary have come through during sessions,
Yeah.
and they are incredible when they come through, and the amount of love and bright light that they bring with them, incredible. I've even been in churches where I've seen Jesus standing inside of the church. Of course, like the rest of the congregation, as far as I know, have no
Yeah.
idea that he's actually standing there. It happened to me like earlier in the week when I was at church service, and I could see
Wow.
him. I just now I'm thinking about it as I'm saying this out loud. I'm like, yeah, I did. I saw him off to the left of the stage standing there. And what was really cool about that is I was kind of on the fence about, going to church. I grew up Catholic, but going to church, I'm like, I need it to be at least a church that's very open minded or
Yeah.
non denominational, just so they're like more inclusive. And so I just started going there a few weeks back. And one of the questions I've been sitting and asking Spirit for is to give me a sign of whether this church is going to be open minded enough. And I see Jesus on
I was
Sunday
gonna say
standing
they
over.
send you Jesus.
I see Jesus. And wouldn't you know it, they have this gentleman get up on stage and he's doing like the sermon, the talk, and he did his entire talk about spiritual gifts and how they show up in the Bible and the different kinds of prophecy and miracles and healing that people can do. And I sat there with like my jaw hitting the floor because it's just an example of how intuition can work, but also asking a question and letting the question develop and asking, is this going to be the right church? Give me a sign. And then when you least expect it, regardless of what the situation is or the question is, you will get a sign. You will get some level of insight, but you don't always know when you're going to get it or how it's going to come through. And that speaks, I think, to what you were just saying about intuition can feel a little bit unsettling, or when you have psychic gifts or downloads, it's not always like this smooth,
Yeah.
beautiful message that comes in. It can like really knock your socks off.
I love that you shared that story. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm actually going to be thinking about that for a while. That's interesting. I love that. And it slides right into my next questions here. Something I see everywhere right now is people feeling activated and overwhelmed or on edge and calling it intuition. From your lived experience, how do you personally tell the difference between intuition and fear, especially when both are present at the same time?
Intuition feels calm, usually. Usually just feels like a subtle whisper or a subtle nudge. Fear feels usually uneasy or a heaviness to it. They feel very, very different, but each person might feel it differently within their own body, depending on how their own gifts work. Because we all have gifts. We were born with them, we've always had them. But if I am more clairsentient, let's say, for example, that means I'm feeling things in my physical body. Then my intuition might feel like a nudge in my stomach or like a flutter in my heart, right? Because it's more physical. Whereas if I'm somebody that is more clairaudient, which is like hearing words and phrases, that's psychic in nature, it might come across as like a word that keeps coming in over and over that's on repeat. But if you sit with yourself and take a few deep breaths and ask, is this my intuition or is this my fear? You will feel it in yourself, usually right away. And if you're spinning and you can't figure out if it's your intuition or your fear, then it's probably fear
Yeah.
because intuition just feels softer.
Yeah.
It feels like you have a guiding force that's with you and helping you. Fear is so contagious and rampant in society today. And I mean, we could turn on any news station or any social media platform and we're going to see it all over it.
Mm-hmm.
And Spirit's been very, very clear recently about the importance of not getting hooked in to low vibration, like doom scrolling predictions that, or featuring someone's face. Sometimes it's my face on the podcast saying, like, the apocalypse is coming, right?
Yeah.
And there's like all these different thumbnails and headlines that are intended for people to get stressed out and then feel compelled to click it and watch it because they're afraid if they don't, they're missing something. They're missing a piece of information. They feel like they're out of control.
Yeah.
And Spirit's been saying over and over lately, like, step out of, you could say, like that 3D matrix
Yeah.
of all of the doomsday predictions. Step out of it. Notice where you're plugged into different things and what's not raising your frequency. Like, what are you plugged into that makes you feel more of that fear or more of that heaviness? And see if you can like unplug yourself from it a little bit more intentionally. And instead, Spirit said, like, spend more time with yourself and embodying the healing and embodying your own sovereignty, your own inner wisdom, your own spark of divinity, instead of getting caught in the loop. Because they were showing it very clearly that when we start going down, like, I need a prediction or I need to know what someone else thinks, then we just get caught in like this hamster wheel of fear. And it's become very clear to me with recent channelings how disempowering that is,
Yeah.
and how people today, even as we're talking, they're giving their power away to whatever fear narrative or control narrative that they are plugged into. And so if you feel like you're moving through life and maybe fear is just a natural thing that you're going through throughout the day or pretty regularly, I would recommend doing like an internal audit where you're asking, like, what am I plugged into or what am I listening to that has more of those control or fear or manipulation energies? And it might not be that you're watching mainstream news.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that you have a family member that watches mainstream news and wants to tell you all about it and wants to drag you into everything they're seeing, and they want to talk about all of it. And so, could you have firmer boundaries about what you're engaging with right now because it is so loud out there?
Yeah. I've had to limit myself. I check one person for news updates and I have to take myself away from it because in the fall, I felt myself just getting like sucked in, and it was like I don't stay up late, and all of a sudden it's like 1 in the morning and I'm reading that just terrible news and digging deeper. So yeah, I had to put those like bumpers up for myself. Talking about your coaching and community, do you notice common ways that people override intuition by listening to fear instead?
Oh, yeah. So, I've been doing this a decade, and I have to take my ownership, my part of this. And I remember first doing this work, I thought I was being helpful when I was
Mhm.
making predictions for people's lives. I thought I was helping them,
Yeah.
like, you know, and some people would ask me the same questions each month. And I just thought, oh, well, they just need more help, you know? All these years later, in hindsight, I really recognize how disempowering readings can be if they're not coupled with next steps or like what to
Yeah.
try or how to embody it or what to consider, for the next 7 days or the next 14 days, implementing into your life. So I have recently, been more public about talking about predictions and how they're not quite aligning with the higher vibration that I want to personally be
Sure.
aligned and working with. So that's been strange because I feel like my whole identity is shifting.
Hmm.
because instead of leading with, here are the 10 predictions that I'm seeing for the world, now I'm like, hey, why don't we talk about your emotions and like get curious about why you're so angry?
Yeah.
And I am not a therapist by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a Gemini rising. And anybody that knows astrology, like I am a journalist, like through and through. I love asking questions and I love asking myself questions. And so anytime there's something that's bubbling up or I'm mad about something, I like asking, why am I mad? And like digging into
Yeah.
it. And so that's the approach I like to have with my work and my community is let's talk about it. Let's get under the hood. Let's stop talking about how everything's dismantling and all the systems are going to be up for renegotiation or rebuilding. Like we can all see and feel the chaos in the external world. So why don't we actually bring the focus like back to ourselves now? And there has been very mixed responses to that, which gives me pause about the collective.
Yeah.
I'm a bit concerned. I mean, we can see it obviously when we are paying attention to headlines like all the anger and rage and violence and war and everything. But I've noticed it on a micro level recently because I've become more vocal about what I want to focus on and the work I want to do in the world. I've had people literally be like, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because I want my predictions. You've been talking about predictions. And now that you don't want to make them, I'm going to go plug in someplace else and find that information from someone else. So instead of, I think my hope was by me being very vocal about how I want to really do more of the deeper work with students and clients, I thought, yes, like I'd get a lot of people being like, yes, yes, let's do it. Like we're going to get out of this matrix. And it wasn't that way. It actually felt, yes, of course, there were people that loved it and are excited and all that. But I'm kind of appalled and shocked at how many people said, I don't want to do the inner work in so many words and in so many actions. Like, I don't want to do that work. And that gives me concern for where we're at as a collective because there's been a couple times where I've been very naive over the years in the spiritual industry. And this is one of those moments where I felt like people would choose better for themselves and their own healing and their own path. And I am not completely seeing that reflected back to me in the ways that I thought I would see it, which makes me think that there are more people than I originally thought that are closed off, that aren't doing the work, that don't want to do the work. And spirit has shown me that there's going to be layers and layers of chaos and all these external events that will happen because different events wake up different people or different
Yeah.
events create the invitation to wake up. But I am concerned about the level of closed offness that so many people have. The other epiphany I'll share when I said I've been naive a few times, the other time was when I was first starting out in this industry. Like, I really thought that healers and psychics and spiritual practitioners were good people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Judging by your reaction, you've had the same.
Yeah.
Then, like, through the years, you've realized, like, oh, they are just people. And then you realize that there's also a lot of unhealed parts of people
Yeah.
that are also becoming healers. So, yeah, all of that, all of that.
I could have said all of that myself about the collective healing and just being shocked. No one wants to do the work. I've seen what doing the work has done in my life and in my husband's life, and that we are completely different people living completely different lives for the absolute better. And I'm just like, everyone needs to experience this. Nobody has the space for it right now.
Yep. Yep. It's
So
true.
I want to talk about something you've been very direct about, and I don't want to soften it. You've said openly that life as we've known it is changing and that systems are dismantling, not eventually, but actively. When you say dismantling is underway, what do you actually mean?
I mean, that every system that we are currently participating in or attached to is up for either a drastic negotiation of how it's going to work moving forward, or it will be completely burned to the ground symbolically. And frankly, I think a lot of light workers will be helping to create what we move into next. But think of any system, right? So it could be healthcare, it could be education, real estate, jobs, AI, like all of it. I don't think there's like one area of life that's going to stay the same. I think by the
Yeah.
time we get to the early 2030s, I feel like our day to day life is going to look absolutely different than the day to day life we have right now. And when I talk about systems collapsing, it makes some people really nervous. Like
Yeah.
they don't want to think about it. It's like, they're hooked into like they want the prediction, but then they hear about all the change and then they get stressed out. So it's like they keep themselves like stuck in that prediction loop. But I hear about all of the dismantling and I actually think it's amazing. And
Yeah.
yeah, like to your point, that we've had really old systems in place and things that haven't been working. And I've had a lot of heat from people that remember when I predicted that Trump was going to win this latest presidential election. There were two different times where I had just blasts of hate coming at me. One was on social media when I did a live stream on election day, and I said, "Okay, it's Donald Trump. He's going to win." Just the people who thought like you're the worst person that was ever born. Like, how do you even talk about Donald Trump? And I always try to approach my predictions like, let's look at this from like a neutral,
Mhm.
balanced place because I think that he is in that position because of the amount of dismantling that needs to happen. Whether you like him or you don't like him, he is a catalyst
Yeah.
and he is doing that through and through. I remember the other time was I have a 90-minute psychic stage show. And I happened to have a show that was before that election, but it was close enough that it was top of mind for people. And there's a part of the show where I asked the people in the audience, what general questions do you have about the world? And somebody raises their hand. I said, who's going to win the presidential election? And I said, Donald Trump. They literally got up out of their seats and they left the show because they couldn't believe that I said he was going to win. So the amount of hatred just for even making a prediction shows you, I think, how closed off people really are, or they are so deep in their own beliefs, in their own story, that it's almost impossible or very hard for them to see another way or to see someone else's
Yeah.
perspective. Like, there's not, like, who's coming to the table right now where there's two sides, two different sides of an issue? Who's coming together and actually talking and making anything change? It's like everyone just wants to prove their point and be angry
Yeah.
about it and spew in some cases how they are a victim and how people have victimized them, or name any country and name, like, look at the news headlines from today and you're going to see it all over the headlines about victim mentality. And the rage, I think, is just going to get louder until it finally just breaks.
Yeah. For most people, sensing dismantling immediately triggers fear, like we talked about, because stability has been tied to safety. And you've already talked about this as like, we're kind of excited for what's to come. Do you see fear as something to overcome or something we're meant to move through?
I love that question. My first gut instinct on that is that we move through it. And the reason I say that is because I think we have to understand why we're fearful.
Hmm.
And so understanding where that fear comes from, usually you find that out when you sit with yourself long enough and ask the deep questions and get curious about where the fear is coming from. But I think we don't really fully get through fear until we understand like the motivating energy
Yeah.
beneath it. Because, we could say that we're afraid that the dollar is going to collapse and we're afraid it's going to go into a digital currency. We're afraid of all the surveillance that's going to happen. We could say that that's the fear and we could get like really worked up about that. But I would even say if you just thought about your relationship to money and you consider who was around you when you were a kid and what did they say about work and money and how did you like absorb that in and make that part of your story about money and how money may bring security, but it's all an illusion.
Yeah. I want to talk more on that in just a second.
Okay.
What I keep feeling is we're not being asked to predict what's coming, and obviously you're getting the same thing. I'm getting that we're being asked to prepare our nervous systems to ride for what's coming. From your perspective, why is nervous system capacity so essential right now?
What I'm even hearing psychically as you ask that question is that there is a current, an energy that we all know runs through us. And with so much of the volatility, it can feel like we're almost short circuiting. So
Yeah.
it feels like why you probably been getting that. I've been getting a similar message too, is because you might feel like your own electrical system is failing or not acting properly, or you feel uh, out of sorts, you feel like you're not running optimally. And so, spirit is nudging us to do that work on our nervous system so that we feel they're using the word secure, like more secure in our own energy and inside of our own body, and feeling like we are comfortable, we are protected, we are guided. Like that all feels a part of it. Um, the way they're showing it to me in this moment is imagining you're watching a breaking news story unfolding on TV. It's like there's a zap, like a zap of energy coming out of that and into you that makes your circuits feel out of whack.
Hmm.
Does that make
That's
sense?
well, I like that. Yeah, it does for me. Yeah, I like that. I've interpreted it, and it was interesting to hear you kind of explain the same thing in the way that you're seeing it. So I appreciate how you just worded that. I have a bigger question. You don't have to just
I'll answer it.
okay.
Give it to me.
What do you see breaking people during times of dismantling, and what do you see carrying people through it?
Ooh, I have been seeing a lot around people losing who they are through this, losing their sense of self, losing their identity. I think some of that's going to be because work itself is going to be one
Yeah,
of the things dismantled. And so you're no longer, in my opinion, going to be able to really lead with identifying yourself by your job title.
yeah,
And that is going to send a lot of people into a tailspin
yeah,
because they have gotten used to the 3D day to day life that they've had. And when that's changing rapidly, it's like they're going to lose their footing. Like they won't understand how they fit into the world anymore, or if their belief in God is being rattled because why would God let this happen? So then this whole like division around religion and the Bible and Jesus, like there's going to be a whole bunch of that stuff too, where people are really going to have doubts about there being a loving and kind God.
yeah.
So I think there'll be some people getting lost in that. think there'll still be a lot of people numbing themselves because they don't want to deal with any of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think there will be, and I've seen it, there are people that are getting through it. There are people that are creating opportunities and birthing new projects out into the world. And there's a lot of really abundant energy available to the individual. Incredibly. It's one of the only times I feel like I've actually sat and thought about this where the external world and what is available for the individual is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can be, engaged in all of the loud noises out there. But if you actually took this time and you got real clear inside of yourself of like what your unique gifts are, why you're here, why are you here now? And you started working with that energy and that curiosity, and you wanted to start a project or a business or something, you could do all kinds of things right now. So that is available. Um, but I think it's the people that know that and they grab a hold of that and they don't want to waste the opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to do better and to be better. And they're not going to get caught up in the shuffle.
Yeah. I love that. And something that I have been trying to say is individually, people can have really beautiful lives and experiences, while collectively everything is wild. And you just affirmed that. I want to go somewhere specific now, and you have spoken openly about this, and we talked about it just a second ago. You have mentioned that the dollar, could devalue and fail and move. We could move towards a digital currency system. And this isn't financial advice. This is a conversation about perception, fear, and preparation. When you say that the dollar could fail and will move to digital currency, what do you actually mean? Are you talking sudden collapse, gradual erosion, and transition? I know when people hear this, their nervous systems go straight into survival.
Yeah. I think we will see it. Yeah, I am no financial advisor. Do not take your financial advice from me at all. But I do feel like we will have a lot of volatility with the stock market this year. So, keeping an eye on that, trusting your intuition of do I have my money invested in the places that I feel they should be invested in? It doesn't feel like a set it and forget it kind of year where you can just put money into something and be like, yeah, it's gonna be fine. It does not feel like that kind of year. I think there's going to be way too much volatility with the stock market for sure. I do think that in the midst of all the volatility, because if it feels psychically that they've already got something in place or they've got a plan in place for a digital currency, that like what I'm hearing psychically is like they come to the table and say, okay, this is what's going to solve the problem. And so they, launch this digital currency and it feels like something similar to a credit card like we use right now. Like for most credit cards, you can go to any country and use it, right? You got a Visa card, a MasterCard, like it works pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
That's what this feels like. But it feels connected to some kind of new technology or new tracking system where it doesn't feel necessarily just like a credit card and then you get your monthly statement and you pay the bill. It feels like it could be connected, like more ingrained either into a cell phone or rolling that into some kind of new personal device. Could be something like a virtual reality kind of thing. But it feels like it's more integrated between countries
Mm-hmm.
where it doesn't feel like it's just the dollar, but somebody in Africa could buy something from someone in New Zealand and like there wouldn't be any issues per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it feels more like a big spider web of currency that many, many, many people use. But I do think there will be some people that won't want to be a part of it. And I've been shown visions of people basically buying land and starting their own micro communities
Mm-hmm.
and not being a part of the new rollout of the currency, and that the micro communities will be focused more on, teaching the kids that live there on their own and like growing
Yeah.
their own food. And so I think there's going to be very different experiences of the future based on, it's kind of like choose your own adventure. Those used to be
Yeah.
books when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's like, what adventure are you choosing? Turn to page 17 and you get to decide I laugh, but it kind of feels like that. I
Yeah.
think some people have gotten so far into fear that they feel like, oh, if I don't do mandates XYZ, then I'm thrown into prison or I'm thrown into like a place that I don't want to live. I don't see it being that strict.
Okay.
I don't. But I do think there's going to be a choice point about what you're going to do or not do about the new regulations. And I think it'll be also some of the loudness of people that will protest against things like this.
Yeah.
So it just feels a little bit soupy and messy from multiple directions. But I would like to remind people that money, how would I put this? Like, it's not real. It's kind of, but it's not. Like, we assign the energy to it, we assign the meaning to it. And so, what is the new story that you have about money? What is the story you want to assign to whatever the currency is that you're going to be dealing with in the future? Because it's much bigger than a new currency system. It's bringing up deep, deep fear inside of people, especially those that have equated money with safety.
You answered a lot of questions. Thank you so much for that. I love that. So ultimately, preparation doesn't have to look extreme. It can look like flexibility, regulation, discernment, and community. I think that's just really helpful. I think people are really scared right now. And it was a really grounded, thorough answer. So thank you.
Yeah. And can
Um,
I add one more thing
of
about, you
course.
mentioned community? I think that our local communities are going to be absolutely critical as we move through this. So, somebody listening to this, it's like, I need something kind of more tangible to sink into. Consider who you are in company with in your local town, your city. What groups and organizations are you a part of, either in person or online? Because as things continue to develop quickly, I do think that communities will help to ground us, and we will feel maybe even a different level or new level of security when we're plugged into different groups that we can go to.
Hmm.
Because whenever I've asked, Spirit has shown me that even if somebody doesn't have food, let's say, that people figure it out and they give them food. So I've never seen this as this end of the world kind of energy. I have seen it be a different world that we will end up living in.
Yeah,
But I think within that, there is a lot of opportunity. And like you said, flexibility. It just depends on how we choose to heal and move through it.
absolutely. I've been getting that with community as well. And still am thinking about my part in cultivating my role in the community. So I
Yeah, and
love that.
sometimes it could be even like a volunteer opportunity, getting plugged into a food pantry or something like that, where you can go for a couple of hours a week or once a month. And so even if it's not something that you feel that you necessarily have the answers to, even professionally right now, or what you would pay to have for your community, it's like, where could I just invest more in my
Yeah,
community? And that could just be through time.
absolutely. Money fear is tied to something bigger, trust in systems and identity. A lot of people are sensing change specifically around America. And when people talk about dismantling of America, what do you think they're actually responding to beneath that language?
I think a lot of people are more intuitive than they give themselves credit for. I think they're already feeling what's coming
Yeah,
before it's happened. So their body, their nervous system, their intuition is already like telling them that it's coming, but they haven't quite figured out like the details of it or how it's going to happen. So they're feeling that fear and it's just getting more and more amplified. But I do think that where you live within the United States really matters
Yeah.
because I know that many people have said over the years, like, yeah, power is with the state you live in. I actually think it's going to get to the point where like it actually is where different lines, like state lines will change, some state lines. I also just think the presidency of the United States changes. I don't think he has the same kind of power.
I've been saying that too.
Yeah. And I don't think I've been saying he doesn't last his first term. And I don't wish ill will or negativity on anybody. But when I look at his energy, it is incredibly volatile. So in terms of like just looking at life force energy,
Sure.
yeah. So I think they're sensing that America is no longer going to be the America that it has been.
One thing I just always have to slide in there is that's okay.
Yeah.
America's
Okay.
been problematic for a lot of people, just like more quiet, it's time for a change.
Yeah. What if we created something even better than what we have now? Like, what
Yeah.
about that? Like, can we think about the best possibility that comes out of this? And I think there's a lot of good that's going to come out of it, but it's just going to look like a dark tunnel for a while, but it's not permanent.
Yeah, change doesn't automatically mean collapse. I throw around the word collapse a lot, but I think it's going to be good and ultimately, I mean in like 7 years, but
Yeah, we got a minute.
yeah. So your work isn't about avoiding change. It's about helping people stay regulated, intuitive, and connected inside it. How do you actually help people release fear while the world is changing around them?
I like asking a series of questions. So depending on the individual and like what the fear is that they're going through, I might say, "Hey, describe what you're afraid of." And they describe it. Okay, well, what's underneath that? They might say, "I don't know." Okay, well, let's talk about it. So I just keep like digging and digging and digging until we get to the core of what it is. But usually it's one of three core energies. And a mentor of mine taught this to me years ago. And from that day forward, my whole life changed when I started asking it through this lens. So when we are upset, or let's say we have any emotion at all that's negative, like grief, rage, whatever, shame, when we have something coming up inside of us, if we ask, which of the three core energies is this? And maybe it's one, two, or all three, but just by asking which core energy it is, the act of doing that helps dissolve what we are feeling because we understand it more. It's like we're listening to it, we're leaning into it. So it doesn't have such a hold over us anymore. So the three energies are: one is safety. Something about what I'm going through right now makes me feel unsafe. The second one is approval. Something about this thing I'm going through makes me feel like I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. And then the third one is control. Something about this makes me feel like I am out of control and I want to be in control. So approval, safety, and control are the three. So I like digging in until I can figure out which of the three core energies it is. Because then once you figure it out, maybe it's two. Usually there's two in there. Um, then you can give it to yourself. So you would give yourself approval. You would give yourself the feeling of safety. You would give yourself remembering that you are in flow and everything is happening in divine order and everything's okay, right? So the antidote is to give it to yourself whenever you've identified which of those it is. But get curious. Get curious. The more questions and the farther you dig into it, that is where the liberation is.
Absolutely. You have channeled collective messages on other podcasts, and I wanted to invite that here. Given everything we've talked about, dismantling fear, money, systems changing, I'd love a message that supports people through this moment, If it feels aligned, would you be willing to channel a collective message right now for people navigating fear and rapid change?
Yes. Let me just tune in and see what comes through.
I want to invite everyone listening to receive this as reassurance, taking what resonates and leaves the rest.
So I invite in my spirit team of angels, guides, loved ones that are of the highest frequency, dimension, and light. I ask you to please step forward and provide a message that can be spoken aloud to those listening today that may help them navigate the days, weeks, months, and time to follow. You're being encouraged to not give your power away. That might be simple to understand on the surface, but we would encourage you to sit with all of the relationships, all of the people that you come in contact with, either in person or digitally, and ask yourself what the feeling, the emotion, the vibration of that relationship is, using more discernment as it was discussed today. Because many of you are sensitive. You were born energetically sensitive. You are picking up more energy than you realize. When you go into different places in your own city, like a bank, a gas station, a store, be very, be very mindful of the people that you are standing near, and not in fear, not in separating yourself from them, because ultimately we are all one. But notice the energy that each person is holding. There will naturally be some people that you will want to stand closer to, next to, and speak with them, connecting with them heart to heart. Those are beautiful interactions to continue to have. Be human. You are human after all. Don't forget to lead with your heart and have real conversations in real life. But also notice when you are in a space and something about the energy doesn't feel right. Intuitively, you may feel that heaviness that was described earlier. You may feel like the person isn't operating optimally. You may feel their anger, their confusion, their fear. We are encouraging you to send love to them as they are one of your fellow humans. But we are advising against going into their energy field to try to lift or prop them up. Right now, it is about standing in your own truth, your own gifts, your own unique abilities. You are meant to be seen. You are meant to be heard. You are meant to be experienced. But it will take discernment as you move through this time ahead to know that you are with and plugged into local communities and individuals that align with your energy. Don't mistake this for agreeing on everything. This is about energy and a frequency level. You can be radiating at a high vibration, just like someone else that you are in community with, but you may not have the same opinion about different things that are happening in the world, and that is okay. It's not about finding carbon copies, replicas of you out in the world. It's about keeping the heart open, aligning with what feels aligned, sending love and healing from a distance when that is appropriate and when the person is willing to receive it. But you don't need to be the one saving everyone. Each soul that has incarnated, that is on earth now, is here for a reason. They wanted to go through what we are in now, and what they choose to do with their life, their time and energy is up to them. Release the need to control, the need to control someone else, the need to control what is next. Lean in to your faith. Lean into the knowingness that you will get through anything. And that all of this, the end of the day, is all temporary. Feels
That
like they had a lot to say.
was stunning. Oh my gosh. I need a moment.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember what I say after it comes through me. So I'll have to listen back to it and take it
I'm
in.
like stunned. I have full body chills. As you were speaking, I felt the words almost like spiral around me and it felt cleansing. Oh, that was
Oh,
exactly
wow.
what I needed to hear. And I know that others are going to feel the exact same way. That was an absolute gift. This whole conversation has been a gift. Thank you. That was incredible.
Thank you. Thanks to my spirit team.
That
They're
was
amazing.
amazing. That was amazing. Oh, wow. I want to remind everyone listening that nervous system regulation is part of spiritual maturity. You don't need to act on everything you sense. Your job is to stay present, resourced, and connected. Dallisa, where can people find you and be supported in your work if they feel called?
Yeah, my website's the best place to go. I've got everything linked up there, including social media and the podcasts that I do, which are The Curious Question. They're micro podcasts, they're like 5 minutes each. And The Curious Question invites the listeners to think of one question that I bring to the table and how it applies to their life each week. And then the other one is Books That Shift Us. And it's just one of my favorite self help or spiritual books, and how we can consider applying it to our own lives. So, all that is connected through my website at spiritandspark.com.
I cannot recommend enough that everyone checks that out. Dallisa, you are a gift. You are just the reassurance and just the grounding that a lot of people need right now. So thank you for sharing your gift with us. And thank you so much for your time today. It was just an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate all of your really great questions and that we could have an honest conversation. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. I did accidentally hang up on Dallisa at the very end, which somehow felt perfectly on theme for today's conversation about surrender and completion. I hope this episode brought you clarity and steadiness wherever you're at. All of Dallisa's information is in the show notes, and if this resonated, please like, share, or send it to someone navigating change right now. I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening.